The MG4 EV XPower is a definition of a car that you do not actually need, but you absolutely want. At the time of filming and in the UK, it costs £36,500. And for that, you're getting two electric motors, a 64 kilowatt hour battery pack, which combine to output a ridiculous 320 kilowatts of power. That's 429 horsepower and 600 Newton meters of torque. It's absolutely ridiculous to think of what the manufacturer's been able to achieve at this price point. Now in this review, I'll be comparing it to some of the alternatives out there, including its sibling, the regular MG4 EV. Now before proceeding with this video, I would just like to thank AntCharge for actually sponsoring it. More on them a little bit later. So to kick off, we have to talk about its performance, and those specs are no word of a lie. Now right now I've got it in terms of its sport mode driving mode, and it does have a new launch control, which I basically put my foot down to the metal on the accelerator pedal. You can see it just here and crop it forwards. 66% power is stated on my instrument cluster, and I'm going to let go and absolutely launch. Yes indeed, it is ridiculously fast, and you've got 600 Newton meters of torque that you can certainly feel straight away. Now, using Race Logic's Performance Box Touch, I had it tested from 0 to 20 miles an hour in just 1.11 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 1.66 seconds, which is a little bit faster than the claimed 1.7 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3.7 seconds. So yes, Porsche Taycan speeds, and that is a little bit slower than the claimed 3.7 seconds. And then 50 to 70 miles an hour in just 1.82 seconds. As for top speed, it is capped at 124 miles an hour. Now indeed, the vehicle is ridiculously fun to drive in a straight line. I don't get tired of putting my foot down to the metal. However, it does come at a cost. See, the MG4 EV XPower in comparison to the regular MG4 EV is 25% stiffer, and that's because the manufacturers recalibrated the springs and the dampers and also included stiffer anti-roll bars, which all makes sense, by the way. It's just that when you're pottering around town in the city or going on a bit more challenging routes or a little less even terrain, let's say on the country roads, you're going to be seesawing around a little bit more, and therefore leads to a little bit more of an uncomfortable driving experience. So just something that you should be noting in comparison to some of the competitors out there. Now equally over here, the manufacturers also included ventilated 345mm disc brakes at the front and at the rear, and therefore means the stopping power is actually pretty good. So yes, the stopping power of this vehicle is good, and it's fit for purpose. Sure, it won't compete with some more expensive vehicles out there on the market, but for what MG has achieved over here, I should commend them. Although I don't really like the fact that they've included fake caliper covers on top and just oversized the caliper size, but that's a small point to make. All I care about is the actual brake performance rather than the look of the caliper from the exterior, but just something I thought I should also mention in this review. Now elsewhere, when it comes to the driver's feel, it is certainly there. You've got a better sense of connection with the steering wheel because it just feels a bit more responsive, at least in comparison to the MG4 EV, and therefore competes with some of the very best in its class. I wouldn't say it competes with the likes of the Porsche Taycan, BMW i4 or the Polestar 2, but it is up there with some of the most fun feeling driving hatchbacks out there. Now equally, in terms of that, you have got an all-wheel drive system which is permanently engaged thanks to the two electric motors, and therefore gives you a little bit extra confidence when you're cornering at speed, or of course if you've got just a little less grip due to it, for example, raining, which is often the case in the UK. However, I did notice that due to the torque vectoring and the way that the vehicle has been calibrated, that if you are going to be demanding power instantaneously when you're exiting, let's say, a roundabout, you will feel that sometimes the vehicle just feels a bit unsettled and it's not really sure what's going on. It is trying to think twice about where to apply the power. So it's just something I noticed, and if I am comparing it to some of the other all-wheel drive vehicles out there on the market, the MG4 EV XPower doesn't quite compete, but still plenty of fun, and it definitely brings a massive smile to my face. So what about when it comes to range? Well, the manufacturer claims that you'll get 239 miles from the mixed WLTP test cycle from its 64 kilowatt hour battery pack, or 61.8 kilowatt hour net. Just by comparison, the regular MG4 EV long range sits at 270 miles, while the extended range model, which has a larger battery pack, sits at 323 miles. Now from my own mixed driving test, I actually netted a very respectable 200 to 220 miles. And just by comparison, the long-range model sat at 220 to 240 miles. So yes, indeed, you're taking a little bit of a hit in terms of the overall range, but it's still a very respectable figure. You can see here how it compares to its main competitors, and given the overall performance that you're getting, it is actually really impressive. Now what's equally impressive, specifically in comparison to its main competitors, is the fact that the manufacturer has incorporated a one-pedal drive. This is as present in the MG4 EV XPower, but wasn't present at the time of the review of the original MG4 EV. If I'm not mistaken, that's come in thanks to a future firmware update. And as a pheasant crosses the road over here, I'm just going to lift off the accelerator pedal and come to a complete standstill. Now, of course, I can disable the one pedal drive via the infotainment system, and it's worth noting that you have to enable one pedal drive every single time you step inside the cabin. I just came to a standstill there because the pheasant just thought to cross the road yet again. But anyway, here it's great to see that the manufacturer is listening to its customers and actually incorporating features that certain EV drivers will like to have. Now you do have different regenerative braking modes that you can select through as well via customizing one of the buttons, for example, on the steering wheel, or of course you can faff around with the infotainment system when you're on the move. You've got level 1, 2 and 3 being the harshest, and you've also got an auto mode which will try and automatically detect what's best for you. Now of course you have got the ability to plug it in, and here via its CCS port you can take up to 135 kilowatts of input, and therefore the manufacturer mentions 150 kilowatts, but that is not actually attainable. Nonetheless, going from 10 to 80% will take you roughly 35 minutes. Now if you were to find a more commonly found 50 kilowatt charger, it will take you 53 minutes to attain 80% of charge. Of course, here you have got its Type 2 port as well, although it's worth noting over here that it is limited to 7 kilowatts, and that's just due to its onboard charger being capped, and unfortunately here there's no means of upgrading to 11 or 22 kilowatts, which would have been handy in certain scenarios. Nonetheless, over here, going from 10 to 100%, it will take you 8.5 hours, while a 3-pin socket will take you roughly 26 hours. Now, it's also worth mentioning that there is vehicle-to-load charging, which effectively means that you can offload the battery to another appliance or another electric vehicle. However, I've got no means of actually verifying this or testing this because an adapter, which is an additional extra by the way, was not provided with this test vehicle. Speaking about charging, this perfectly brings me on to today's sponsor, AntCharge, a free-to-download app that gives you credit for providing feedback on your charging experience, which you can then use with the likes of Octopus Electric Universe, VW, Hyundai, Kia, Amazon, Apple, or even better still, donate it straight to charities. Now, due to the nature of the app, you'll also be able to quickly find your nearest chargers, such as this one from Source London. Equally, you can see how they've been rated by fellow EV enthusiasts, giving you peace of mind before traveling to said location. All that's required is to sign up using an email, so all your data also remains anonymous. If you download the AntCharge app using the link below, you'll even get some starting credits. So aside from how it is on the road, what about when it comes to be sat within the cabin? Well, here I'm pleased to report that the XPower is a refinement over the regular MG4 EV. And sure enough, it's not going to compete with more expensive alternatives out there, but it's great to see that you now have got Alcantara upholstery. You also have got grab handles throughout the cabin, which wasn't present at the time of filming of the regular MG4 EV, and also a rear middle headrest, potentially because MG think that if anyone sat in the middle seat, they'll definitely need a headrest given the amount of power you've now got within the XPower. Now you've also got good use of physical controls on the steering wheel, and you've also got 2 customizable buttons, one of which I've actually assigned to my drive mode selector, while the other one is for my climate controls, because the actual physical climate controls are not actually present in the cabin, and instead you've got a few shortcut buttons that are found underneath the 10.25 inch display. This does actually perfectly bring me on to technology, and here the display itself is actually a little bit more responsive in comparison to what I reviewed on the regular MG4 EV. It's still very intuitively laid out and gives you the right sort of options. You also have got support for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay over a wired connection, which is certainly appreciated. Now, as for the secondary display within the cabin, it comes in form of a 7-inch instrument cluster, and here it will give you all the key driving information that you'll require. However, it is a shame that unlike some rival alternatives, it does not feed through navigation data from the third-party mobile operating systems. Of course, the built-in nav system will work, but it would have been great to see a further degree of integration and customization. Furthermore, you do not have a head-up display, even included as an option. What does come fitted as standard, however, is a 6-speaker audio system with a virtual subwoofer and 3D sound. If you want some more information about this, do check out my original review of the MG4 EV audio system, because it's absolutely identical to the one that's found within the XPower. You can find this review up on your pop-up banner, down in the description below, or indeed in the pinned comments. Speaking about its sound system, it does bring me on to cabin noise, and here it's not too bad across the board, although it does suffer at higher speeds, specifically with tyre noise. Again, you can find some more information about this on my detailed audio review, because I've also got in-cabin measurements. Now, when it comes to the overall seating comfort, I've got no issues with all the seats. They're all very soft and accommodating. Specifically with that Alcantara upholstery, it also feels pretty nice to be sat in. Now, in terms of the front 2 seats, they're heated, and so is the steering wheel. However, the driver's seat has got 6-way electronic controls, while the passenger seat only has 4-way manual controls. Yes, indeed, you do not have any sort of height adjustments, which might be problematic for certain individuals. Now, as for the rear of the cabin, headroom and legroom might be a little bit limited for 6'2" individuals, but should certainly suffice for a lot of consumers out there. Furthermore, it's great to see that MG has optimized the rear footwell design, meaning that you've got almost a completely flat floor. This means that the rear middle occupant, which as a reminder now has a headrest, can be sat here without too much discomfort. Now, aside from all of this, I would like to highlight that there is a pressure sensor that's found within the driver's seat, and that actually makes it quite convenient as a singular occupant when you're stepping in or out of the vehicle. Furthermore, the vehicle itself doesn't completely power down when you step outside up until you lock it, and therefore means that if you've got anyone that's sat within the cabin, they'll still have access to the infotainment system and the climate controls, which isn't the same that could be said about its rivals. However, the MG4 EV XPower is a little bit cumbersome each time you're switching it on. Indeed, over here, not only when you sit inside, you'll have to press on the brake pedal twice, once to initiate the vehicle and then once to initiate a drive, which does seem a little bit cumbersome in comparison to some of the alternatives out there on the market. Equally, it would have been great to see the manufacturer optimize storage within the cabin. The glove box feels a bit more slender than it should do. There's no cup holders at the rear of the cabin due to the fact that there is no pull-down armrest compartment. The door bins are not lined in any sort of fabric, and as for the wireless smartphone charger, which is great to see included as standard, it's not actually secure. Even with its non-slip material, your phone is going to go absolutely flying if you're going to do any sort of fruitful driving or indeed going to be launching the vehicle, which I suspect most people getting the XPower might actually do on a regular basis. Thankfully, it's otherwise excellent. The front door bins will accommodate a 500ml bottle alongside small to medium-sized valuables. The rear two are surprisingly a little bit more limited, but you do actually have small little pockets that are found towards the rear portion of the front seats, handy for example for a smartphone. You've also got a small little area that's found towards the rear portion of the center console, and here you'll also find a USB Type-A port. There's another USB Type-A and Type-C ports towards the front of the cabin, and these reside next to a 12-volt socket. Now further down you have got 2 cup holders, a small little retractable area which has actually got a non-slip bay, which is quite handy for a larger size smartphone or a tablet, a mesh compartment which can be handy for your key fob, and then you've also got a small compartment found within the center armrest. Just to top it off, you've even got a sunglass holder that is found next to the rear view mirror. All this actually combines to provide you good storage within the cabin. Now, of course, when it comes to storage, we have to talk about its boot. And here you've got 363 litres to play around with, or if you were to drop down its seats, you've got 1,165 litres, which is near identical to the regular MG4 EV. Now, you've got that hatchback design, but unfortunately it's not electronically operated. Still, the actual tailgate is very easy to open and close. You've also got 60/40 rear split folding seats only, with no integrated ski latch. There's also no seatbelt runners, which does seem a little bit cumbersome in this day and age. Thankfully, however, you have got a flat floor thanks to a adjustable boot floor, which has now been included in the XPower, and you've therefore got also a sizable underfloor compartment, which can be handy for taking your charging cables. Speaking about the front of the vehicle, this does lead me on to its exterior design, and here I've got no complaints whatsoever. I absolutely love the regular MG4 EV, and the XPower is pretty much near on identical. There are only small little grey accents that can be found towards the front and rear bumpers and towards the side skirts. but it's still got that sort of flared profile with its pretty aggressive look towards the front, very stylish headlights and very nice looking taillights as well. Better still, it also has 18-inch Cyclone alloys that come fitted as standard, and it comes in a white or blue finish. If, however, you want the exclusive XPower Racing green finish, which is pictured, it'll cost you £800. I do think it's a worthwhile investment given it's not exactly overly expensive and it really does spruce up the vehicle. Now, my only complaint, however, is that very much like the MG4 EV, the towing capacity is rated at just 500 kilograms, both for braked and unbraked trailers, which is a lot lower than a vast majority of its competitors. There's also no roof load capacity, which doesn't allow you to expand storage with the vehicle. On the other hand, MG has included a plethora of driver assistance systems, which are certainly appreciated and very much does give you a contrast in comparison to the vast majority of its competitors, which often charge an additional extra. Here it's given it a safety assist score by Euro NCAP of 78%. Indeed, it has actually been tested by the agency, where it scored 5 out of 5 stars, getting 83% in adult occupancy and 80% in its child occupancy tests. This was for the regular MG4 EV, but one can only imagine this would also apply to the XPower. Now, in terms of the driver assistance systems, you have got active emergency brake, lane keep assist, or supposedly you do, because on my tested vehicle and on another XPower I saw in the UK, it didn't seem to be present. I actually highlighted this to MG and I seem to have been the first person in the world, or at least in the UK, to actually highlight it. Nonetheless, over here, this might come in at a future firmware update. Then you've got lane departure warning, traffic jam assist, which actually gives you decent steering support on the motorway. It isn't exactly the best in the world, but it's certainly appreciated. Then you've got intelligent speed assist, which isn't exactly as good as the name suggests because it does seem to randomly pick out the wrong signs and also fails to update regularly. Then you've got adaptive cruise control, which actually does a decent job of regulating the distance between you and a leading vehicle, but it is worth noting that it does feel a little bit jittery in comparison to some of its main competitors. Then you have got driver attention alert, blind spot detection, which is certainly appreciated on the motorway, lane change assist, rear cross traffic alert, and even a door opening warning. Now, what's more is that the manufacturer has included 360-degree cameras, all while not being the highest resolution cameras, and also rear parking sensors. These are certainly appreciated as rear view visibility is quite limited. It is also worth pointing out over here that for those with a keen eye, that there is now a rear wiper. This wasn't present in the original MG4 EV that was reviewed on the channel. Now, elsewhere, when it comes to visibility, front and aside is non-issue whatsoever, and therefore it means that parking and maneuverability is a breeze. Furthermore, it is also worth noting that at lower speeds, if you were to indicate, it will initiate the 360-degree camera system on your infotainment system, which in my opinion can be quite distracting. Thankfully, however, there is a setting to disable said behavior, so therefore if you do not want it, you can easily turn it off. So with all that in mind, it brings us on to our verdict. And quite frankly, the MG4 EV XPower really does deliver in terms of its promise. It's a souped up version of the regular MG4 EV. Thanks to its 2 electric motors and that 64 kilowatt hour battery pack, you're going to go ridiculously fast in a straight line and also have improved handling characteristics. All while still being very practical, thanks to the suite of driver assistance systems that come featured as standard, albeit not exactly finely tuned. You have got a good use of technology within the cabin, a spacious interior design, and a good boot capacity. All of this packaged up at £36,500, it makes the XPower an absolute no-brainer for those people looking to buy such an electric vehicle. And as a result of this, it gets our Best Buy award. Now, we'd be curious to know what you make of the MG4 EV XPower down in the comments section below and how you feel it compares with some of its competitors, be it fully electric or indeed petrol-powered vehicles. Now, if you have liked this independent detailed review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.